I went looking for Christmas lights in the cedar chest, found 43 pages of lies instead. January 6th, 6:15 in the morning. The furnace kicked on with that metal groan it makes every winter. House still smelled like pine needles, though we'd dragged the tree to the burn pile 3 days prior. I needed the outdoor lights for the shed. Bulb burned out above the grain scale, and I couldn't calibrate in the dark. Basement stairs creaked under my boots. Cold enough down there to see my breath. The chest sat in the corner where it always had, under that little window with frost creeping up the glass. Hinges complained when I lifted the lid. Musty smell rolled out. Mothballs and old wool and something else. Leather. The diary lay under Charlotte's grandmother's quilts. Worn brown cover, page swollen from years of her handwriting. I'd never touched it before. Private things ought to stay private. But it was open, just a crack. I sat on the cold concrete, read one page, then another. March 18th. R made me feel alive again. Walt only loves his machines. My wedding band caught the weak morning light coming through that frosted window. 40 years I'd worn it. I closed the diary, sat there in the silence, furnace rattling somewhere above me. Then I opened it again. I needed to know everything. I read that diary front to back. Took me near 2 hours, sitting on an overturned feed bucket with my back against the foundation stones. First entry was February of last year. 14 months ago. Right after the ice storm that took down the power lines for 3 days. I remembered that week. We'd huddled by the wood stove, playing cards by lantern light. She'd laughed when I burned the chili, said it tasted like the first meal we ever cooked together back when neither of us knew a skillet from a saucepan. Turns out she'd met him that same week. Rick Vasquez, equipment salesman, came by during the storm to check on a tractor order, stayed for coffee. She wrote about his hands, how they didn't have calluses like mine, how he smelled like cologne instead of diesel and dirt. The entries got more detailed as the months went on. Hotel names, route numbers, lies she'd told me about book club and quilting circle and her sister in Des Moines who didn't exist anymore, been dead 6 years. Every Tuesday night, I thought she was at the library. She was 30 miles south in a Super 8 off Highway 63. Page 27 made my hands shake. Rick says Walt will sign anything. He trusts me with the papers. What papers? Page 35. Talked to Rick's lawyer friend about the quitclaim. Says it's easy if we're careful. Page 41. Spring will change everything. R promised. The word spring showed up 6 times in the last 10 entries. Something was coming, something they'd planned. I closed the diary when I heard footsteps upstairs. The kitchen floor creaked the way it does when someone's standing by the sink. Water ran. Coffee pot gurgled. Charlotte humming something I didn't recognize. I climbed those stairs slower than I'd gone down them. Every step felt like walking through mud. When I pushed open the basement door, warm air hit me. Bacon smell, butter melting in the cast iron. She stood at the stove with her back to me. Pink bathrobe, hair still damp from the shower. Radio playing low on the counter, some talk show host going on about the weather. Morning, she said without turning. Thought you were going to sleep in. I crossed the kitchen, kissed her cheek, tasted like lotion, like something floral and foreign. Slept fine, I said. First lie I ever told her. She cracked eggs into the pan, 3 of them, 2 for me, 1 for her, same as 40 years. Coffee's fresh. Did you find those lights? Not yet. Want help looking? No. She glanced at me then, just a flicker. You okay? I poured coffee into the mug she'd given me for Christmas, white ceramic with a faded John Deere logo. My hands were steady. That surprised me. Fine, I said. Just cold down there. She nodded, went back to the eggs. The spatula scraped against cast iron. Grease popped. Outside the window, gray light spread across the fields. Nothing but frozen ground and corn stubble under a low sky. Crows on the fence line, calling to each other in that harsh way they do. I sat at the table. Same chair I'd sat in for 4 decades. Same crack in the vinyl seat. Same view of the barn and the equipment shed and the silo that needed paint. Charlotte set the plate in front of me. Eggs over easy, just the way I'd always taken them. Toast with strawberry jam from the batch she'd put up last June. I wondered if she'd been thinking about him while she stood at the stove, stirring that pot. If she'd imagined a different kitchen, a different man across the table. Amy called yesterday, she said. Wants to know if we're coming to Easter dinner. Our daughter, 38 years old, taught 3rd grade over in Cedar Rapids. Had her mother's eyes and her mother's laugh, and no idea what was sitting in a leather diary in the basement. It's 2 months away, I said. She likes to plan. Charlotte sipped her coffee. I told her we'd be there. I cut into the eggs. Yolk ran across the plate. I ate because not eating would have been strange, because I'd been eating her cooking every morning since 1985, and a man doesn't just stop. Sure, I said. We'll be there. She smiled, reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Her fingers were warm, wedding ring still on, gold band I'd saved 3 months' wages to buy, back when 3 months' wages wasn't much. Love you, she said. I looked at her, really looked. Tried to see when the woman I married had turned into this stranger who kept hotel receipts in her glove box and wrote other men's names in cursive loops. Love you too, second lie, easier than the first. Earl Pickett had been sitting in the same booth at the Jasper Diner since before I married Charlotte. Back corner, red vinyl patched with duct tape, view of Main Street and the hardware store across the way. He was there every morning at 7:30, same as the sun coming up. I slid into the seat across from him. The vinyl squeaked. Whole place smelled like bacon grease and burnt coffee and that industrial cleaner they use on the floors. Grills sizzled behind the counter. Radio played low. Farm report, hog prices. Earl looked up from his newspaper. 72 years old, face like a road map, glasses thick enough to stop bullets, retired banker, knew every financial secret in Jasper County, kept them all locked up tight. You look like hell, he said. I pulled out my phone, hands still steady. That surprised me again. I'd taken photos of 3 diary pages before I came, ones that mentioned money, ones that mentioned papers, slid the phone across the table. Earl picked it up. Read. His coffee mug stopped halfway to his mouth. Set it down slow. Read some more. Jesus, Walt. Keep reading. He scrolled through all 3 photos. The diner noise kept on around us. Silverware clinking, someone laughing at the counter, the waitress calling out an order. Earl set the phone down like it might explode. How long? 14 months. Rick Vasquez? You know him? Sold me a baler 2 years back. Earl took off his glasses, rubbed his eyes. Slick talker, younger than us. 52. And she's 64. Earl put his glasses back on, looked at me the way he used to look at loan applications that didn't add up. That page there, the one about papers, when's the last time you checked your joint account? Something cold dropped through my stomach. I don't, I said. She handles the bills. Earl pulled out his own phone, tapped through screens with thick fingers. What bank? First Covenant. More tapping. He held the phone to his ear. Waited. The grill kept sizzling. Someone dropped a plate. Ceramic crash, muttered apology. Jerry? Earl Pickett. I need you to look up an account. He rattled off our account number from memory. Bastard really did know every financial secret in the county. Pull the last 90 days of activity. Long pause. Earl's face went hard. When? Another pause. How much? His eyes cut to me. Cash withdrawal, no cosign needed. My hands weren't steady anymore. Yeah, thanks, Jerry. He hung up, set the phone on the table between us like evidence at a crime scene. Last Tuesday, Earl said. $18,000. Cash. Charlotte walked in alone, filled out the slip, walked out with it in an envelope. The diner kept moving around us. Coffee pouring, plates scraping, door chiming as someone left. I couldn't hear any of it clearly anymore. Just a ringing in my ears like standing too close to the grain dryer. 18,000. That's boat down payment money, Earl said. He leaned forward, lowered his voice. Rick Vasquez's dealership also sells recreational vehicles, boats, ATVs. I know because I financed half the inventory. She's stealing from me. Has been for months, probably. Jerry said there were other withdrawals, smaller ones. 500 here, 800 there. You never noticed? I trusted her. Earl sat back. The booth vinyl creaked. He stared at me with those sharp banker eyes that had seen 100 men lose everything because they trusted the wrong person. Walt, this isn't just an affair. I know. This is theft. Fraud if she forged your signature on anything. That diary page. She's talking about a quitclaim deed. You know what that means? I knew. A quitclaim deed transfers property ownership. She wanted to take the farm, the 40 acres my father bled for, the land I'd worked every spring and fall for 43 years. Check Rick's recent purchases, Earl said quietly. I'll bet you a year's grain yield. There's a boat registered in his name. $18,000 range. Bought last week. The waitress appeared, poured coffee neither of us had asked for, disappeared again. What do I do? My voice sounded wrong, too thin. Earl folded his newspaper, creased it down the middle the way he always did, precise and deliberate. You do what every smart man does when he finds out he's been robbed. You call a lawyer, you freeze the accounts, and you file first before she knows you know. That's cold. So's taking $18,000 behind your husband's back. He pushed the coffee toward me. Drink. Then we're driving to Cedar Rapids. I know someone. Handles divorces. She's meaner than a snake and twice as smart. Earl. She tried to steal your land, Walt. Your father's land. His voice went hard as the January ground outside. That ain't a marriage anymore. That's a crime scene. I picked up the coffee. It burned going down. Didn't help. Darlene's office smelled like old paper and floor wax. County courthouse. Second floor. Window overlooking the square, where they put up the Christmas lights every year. She'd worked here 31 years. County clerk. Knew every deed, every marriage certificate, every property transfer in Jasper County by heart. My younger sister, 61, never married, said she'd seen too many of them fall apart to risk it herself. She looked up when I knocked, reading glasses on a chain around her neck, gray hair pulled back tight. She took one look at my face and closed the file she'd been working on. What happened? I shut the door. The latch clicked. Somewhere down the hall, a copy machine hummed. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, that sound that gets into your teeth. I need you to pull some records. What kind? Marriage certificate? Property deed? Anything filed in the last 2 years with Charlotte's name on it. Darlene stood up, came around the desk, put her hand on my arm. Walt, please. She studied me, then nodded, went to the filing cabinets that lined the back wall. Metal drawers on rollers. She knew the system, like I knew my fields, what went where, what year, what section. 10 minutes later, she had a stack of documents spread across her desk. Marriage certificate from 1985, original property deed from 1967 when my father bought the farm, refinance paperwork from 2019 when we took out that loan for the new equipment. She pointed at the 2019 documents. Look at the signature date. I looked. February 14th, 2019, Valentine's Day. So? You were in Omaha that day, Grain Futures Conference. I remember because you missed my birthday dinner the night before. The fluorescent lights kept buzzing, my hand on the desk, gold wedding band catching that harsh light. I wasn't home to sign this. No. Darlene pulled out another document, newer, the paper still white, not yellowed like the others. And this showed up in the digital records last month. Hasn't been filed yet, just a draft. Quitclaim deed. Charlotte Brennan, transferring all ownership interest in the property to Charlotte Brennan, sole owner, my signature at the bottom, notarized, dated January 2nd. I'd been in the barn that day, fixing the hay elevator. That's not my signature, I said. I know. Darlene took off her glasses, let them hang on the chain. It's close, real close. But look at the W in Walter. You do a loop at the bottom. This one doesn't. I stared at that forged signature, at my name written in someone else's hand. She's been planning this. Yes. How long can a draft sit before it has to be filed? No limit. She's waiting for the right time. Darlene gathered the documents, tapped them square on the desk. Walt, she can't file this. It's fraud. But if she tried, if she got it past someone who didn't look close, you could lose the farm before you even knew it was gone. And the copy machine down the hall stopped. Sudden silence, except for those lights in the old radiator under the window, ticking as it heated. Earl says I need a lawyer. Earl's right. He knows someone in Cedar Rapids. Darlene wrote something on a sticky note, peeled it off, handed it to me, name and phone number. Margaret Hale. She handled the Jensen divorce 3 years ago. Remember when Dan's wife tried to take the implement dealership? I remembered. The whole county had talked about it. Margaret Hale had torn that woman's case apart like a combine through a corn stubble. She won't be cheap. Neither is losing your land. I folded the sticky note, put it in my shirt pocket. Through the window, I could see Main Street, the diner where Earl still sat in his booth, the hardware store, the bank where Charlotte had walked in with a withdrawal slip and walked out with $18,000. Small town. Everybody knew everybody. By tomorrow, they'd all know I'd been in the courthouse pulling records. By the weekend, they'd know why. Darlene. Yeah? When this gets out, it'll get out, she said. Can't stop that. Will you? I didn't know how to finish it. She came around the desk again, hugged me. She smelled like the lavender soap she'd used since we were kids, her cheek against my shoulder. Dad would be proud of you, she said quietly. I held on to my little sister in that office that smelled like paper and wax and 30 years of other people's documents. Outside the window, January lights spread thin across the courthouse square. Too cold for the snow they'd been promising, just gray sky and frozen ground and the wind pushing trash down Main Street. I hope so, I said. She pulled back, looked at me hard. Go see Margaret. Today. File before Charlotte does. What if she contests? Darlene smiled. Not a happy smile. The kind you make when you know something the other person doesn't. Let her try. Margaret Hale's office was in a brick building, 2 blocks off the interstate. 3rd floor, no receptionist. She answered her own door, 58, gray suit, handshake like a vice grip. Earl called, she said. Sit. I sat. Leather chair across from her desk. The whole office smelled like coffee and paper. Law books lined the walls. Window looked out at the parking lot, cars gleaming under that weak winter sun. I gave her everything. The diary pages on my phone, the bank statements Earl had gotten from Jerry, the quitclaim draft Arlene had found. Spoke for 20 minutes straight, told her things I'd never said out loud. Margaret didn't interrupt, just made notes on a yellow legal pad. When I finished, she set down her pen. Your wife committed fraud, possibly multiple counts, forgery, theft, depending on what else we find, embezzlement. I just want the farm protected. You'll get that. She flipped through the documents Darlene had copied. But understand, when we file, this becomes public record. Everyone will know, your kids, your neighbors, the whole county. I know. Do you? She looked at me over the reading glasses perched on her nose. Because, in my experience, men like you think they know. Then reality hits and they fall apart. I won't fall apart. Good. Because she will fight. They always do when there's money involved. Margaret pulled out a calendar. We file Friday. Catch her off guard. Weekend gives you time to secure the property before she can respond. Change locks, document everything, move valuables to a safe location. She's still living in the house. Not for long. Margaret wrote something on her pad. I'll include a motion for temporary exclusive occupancy. Judge Hendricks owes me a favor. He'll grant it. Friday was 4 days away. What about our kids? What about them? Do I tell them? Margaret leaned back in her chair. It creaked. That's not a legal question. That's a father question. But if you want my advice, tell them before she does. Control the narrative. I drove home in silence, radio off, just the sound of tires on cold pavement and the heater blowing stale air. The fields rolled past, frozen, barren, waiting for spring that was still 3 months off. Charlotte's car was in the driveway when I pulled up, kitchen light on. I could see her shadow moving past the window. I didn't go in right away, sat in the truck with the engine ticking as it cooled, watched that shadow. 40 years I'd known that shape, the way she moved, how she stood at the counter, the tilt of her head when she was thinking. Stranger now, all of it. Inside she was making dinner, pot roast. The smell hit me when I opened the door. Beef and carrots, and that rosemary she always used. Radio playing, some old country station. Merle Haggard singing about Mama Tried. You're home late, she said. Didn't turn from the stove. Had errands. In Cedar Rapids? My blood went cold. How'd you know? Earl's wife saw you. Called to see if everything was okay. Now she turned. Wooden spoon in her hand. Face concerned. Or maybe just good at pretending. Is everything okay? Fine. Walt, I said fine. She flinched, set down the spoon. You've been different all week. Distant. Are you angry with me? The laugh came out before I could stop it. Bitter. Wrong sounding in that warm kitchen with dinner cooking and Merle singing and everything looking exactly like it had for 40 years. No, I said, also about angry. Then what? I looked at her, really looked. Tried to find the lie in her face. The crack. Some sign that she knew I knew. Nothing. Just concern. Just my wife of 4 decades asking why her husband was acting strange. My back's been bothering me, I said. Gonna sleep in the guest room tonight. Don't want to keep you up with tossing and turning. Relief flooded her face. Oh, okay. I can bring up the heating pad. No, I'm fine. 3rd night in a row I'd slept in that room. She hadn't questioned it the first 2 times either. Maybe she was relieved. Maybe she lay in our bed at night thinking about Rick Vasquez and his uncalloused hands. Dinner's in 20 minutes, she said. I went upstairs. The guest room was cold, no heat vent. I lay on the bed fully clothed and stared at the ceiling. Water pipes rattled in the walls. Somewhere outside, a dog barked. The house creaked and settled the way old houses do. My phone buzzed. Text from Tom, our son, 41, veterinarian, had his own practice over in Marion. Mom says you're coming to Easter. Amy wants to do it at her place this year. That work? Easter. 2 months away. By then, Charlotte would know. By then, the whole county would know. By then, nothing would work the way it used to. I typed back, sure, another buzz. Amy this time. Can you and Mom come a day early? Want to show you the new garden beds? Our daughter, the one who looked like Charlotte, who had her mother's laugh, who taught third graders to read and called every Sunday and believed her parents were solid. I didn't answer. Easter came on April 20th. I'd slept in the guest room for 2 months straight, filed for divorce on that Friday in February like Margaret said. Charlotte had been served papers 3 days later while she was at the grocery store. Deputy handed them to her in the parking lot, right between the automatic doors in her car. Earl's wife had watched it happen. Told Earl. Earl told me. Charlotte came home white-faced, shaking, papers clutched in her hand, found me in the barn greasing the planter bearings. What is this? I kept working. Grease gun in my hand, the smell of lithium and cold metal. Divorce petition. You can't. Already did. She'd tried everything then. Crying, begging, anger, threats. I'd moved her things to the guest room that same day. Changed the locks on the master bedroom. Margaret had been right about Judge Hendricks. He'd granted the temporary occupancy motion. Charlotte could stay in the house until the trial, but I controlled access. The kids didn't know. Not yet. Charlotte had begged me not to tell them. Please, Walt, let me explain. Let me tell them my way. I'd agreed. Mistake. Amy's house was south of Cedar Rapids. New construction, big windows, garden beds she'd built herself along the fence. Tom's truck was already there when we pulled up. Separate vehicles, Charlotte and I. We didn't ride together anymore. The ham was on the table when we walked in. The whole house smelled like brown sugar glaze and yeast rolls. Amy hugged us both. Tom nodded from the kitchen. His wife Sarah was at her mother's. Convenient. We sat, said Grace. Amy in the middle, trying too hard. Tom quiet. Charlotte's hands shaking when she reached for the potatoes. I made it through the ham. Through the small talk about Amy's third graders and Tom's practice and the weather warming up. Made it through dessert, lemon cake, Charlotte's recipe that Amy had learned years ago. Then Amy's phone buzzed. She looked at it. Her face changed. Mom, her voice went flat. Why did Karen Hendricks just text me congratulations on getting through this difficult time? The table went quiet. Fork scraped against plate somewhere. The refrigerator hummed. Charlotte's face crumpled. Amy, what difficult time? Tom's phone buzzed. He looked at me, at Charlotte. Dad filed for divorce? Tom, Charlotte started. 2 months ago, and nobody told us. I set down my coffee. The mug clicked against the saucer. Your mother and I? Why? Amy's voice cracked. She was staring at Charlotte now. Both kids were. Why would Dad file for divorce? Charlotte's mouth opened, closed, tears on her face. Real ones, I thought. Or maybe not. Maybe I'd never been able to tell the difference. There's been a misunderstanding. Mom. Tom's voice was hard. Veterinarian voice, the one he used when an animal was suffering and the owner wouldn't face it. Why did Dad file? Silence. I could have stayed quiet, let her tell it her way. Spin it so she was the victim, and I was cold and distant and impossible to please. But I thought about that diary, about $18,000, about my signature forged on a quitclaim deed. Your mother's been having an affair, I said. 14 months, with a man named Rick Vasquez. She also stole $18,000 from our joint account and tried to transfer the farm to her name using a forged document. Amy's face went white. Tom stood up. Chair scraped back. Jesus Christ. Tom. Charlotte reached for him. He stepped back. Don't. It's not what it sounds like. What else could it possibly sound like? His voice was rising now, Sarah's good plates rattling on the table. You cheated on Dad? You stole from him? I was going to pay it back. With what? I asked. Calm. Too calm. The money from selling my father's farm? Amy made a sound. Small. Broken. She was looking at her phone now, scrolling. Karen's text says you tried to steal Grandpa's farm. Is that true? Charlotte went pale. Actual pale. Gray around the mouth. Amy, let me explain. Is it true? I needed options. Tom walked out. Didn't say another word, just grabbed his coat from the hook by the door and left. Truck engine started. Gravel sprayed. Amy stood up slowly, tears running down her face. She looked at Charlotte like she was seeing a stranger. Get out. Honey, get out of my house. Please. Now. Charlotte left. Coat forgotten, purse forgotten, just stumbled out the door and got in her car and drove away. I sat at the table, the ham congealing, the cake half eaten, Amy across from me crying into her hands. Did she really? she whispered. Try to steal Grandpa's land? Yes. Oh my God. I wanted to comfort her, wanted to say something that would make it hurt less, but there wasn't anything. Some truths just sit there like stones. Amy wiped her eyes, looked at me. I'm sorry, Dad. Not your fault. I mean, I'm sorry she did this to you. I nodded. Couldn't speak. She got up, came around the table, hugged me from behind, her arms around my shoulders. She smelled like her mother's perfume, wore her mother's face, had her mother's hands, but she wasn't her mother, not in the ways that mattered. We're on your side, she said quietly. Tom and me. Whatever happens, you know that, right? I patted her arm. I know. But knowing didn't make it hurt less. Tom's veterinary clinic was on the edge of Marion. Low building, gray siding, parking lot full of pickup trucks and SUVs with dog crates in the back. Sign out front said Brennan Animal Care in green letters my son had picked himself. I sat in my truck across the street for an hour, engine off, heat fading. April morning, still cold enough for frost on the windshield. Watched clients come and go. Woman with a cat carrier, old man with a limping retriever, young couple with something small wrapped in a towel. Tom's truck was parked by the side door, same spot every day. He'd been avoiding my calls since Easter. 3 weeks now. Amy said give him time. Said he was processing. I just wanted to see my son. The clinic door opened at noon. Tom stepped out. Scrubs, coffee in a paper cup. He saw my truck immediately, stopped. Steam from the coffee rising in the cold air. I got out, walked across the street, gravel crunching under my boots. A semi rolled past, air brakes hissing, smell of diesel exhaust and wet pavement from morning rain. Tom didn't move, just waited, face unreadable. I'm not asking you to talk, I said when I reached him. Just wanted you to know I'm here if you need me. He stared at his coffee. I called her. Your mother? Yeah. He took a sip. She said you pushed her away, that you've been cold for years, that she was lonely. The parking lot felt too big, too open, wind cutting through my jacket. Did you believe her? I don't know what to believe. He looked at me then, eyes red, tired. You really didn't know for 14 months? No. How do you not know your wife is... He stopped, shook his head. Never mind. Stupid question. It's not stupid. It is. He crushed the empty coffee cup. I thought you two were solid. My whole life, you were the example. You and Mom. 40 years. That's supposed to mean something. It did mean something. Not enough, apparently. A car pulled into the lot. Woman with a boxer that limped. Tom waved at her. She waved back. Went inside. She tried to steal Grandpa's farm, Tom said quietly. That true? Yes. The farm he almost lost in the 80s. The one he worked himself half to death to keep. Yes. Tom leaned against the building, closed his eyes. I keep thinking about Grandpa, about how he'd take me out to the fence line when I was a kid, show me the property markers, tell me that land was blood and sweat and that it stays in the family. I remember. She was going to sell it, wasn't she? Her and that Rick guy. I didn't answer. Didn't need to. Tom opened his eyes. Maria Vasquez called me, Rick's wife. You know her? No. She works at the hospital, radiology tech. Called to ask if I knew Rick was leaving her, said she found texts, pictures, hotel receipts, asked if you knew. What did you tell her? That yeah, you knew, that you were handling it. He pushed off the wall. She's filing for separation, taking the kids. Said Rick quit his job, left town. Nobody knows where. That was new. Rick running. Charlotte's diary had been full of promises. We'll be together. Fresh start. Spring will change everything. Spring was here. Rick was gone. Mom's alone, Tom said. Not sympathetic. Just stating fact. Yes. Good. The word hung between us. Cold. Final. My son, who'd spent his life saving animals, who cried when our dog died, who believed in second chances. He turned to go back inside. Stopped. Maria said something else. Said she found a receipt in Rick's truck. Boat purchase. $18,000, same amount Mom took from your account? I know. Did she know? That he was using her money to buy himself a boat he'd take with another woman? I don't think so. Tom nodded slowly. That's almost sad. If she wasn't a thief herself, it'd be almost sad. He went inside, door closing behind him with a soft click. I stood in that parking lot with the diesel smell fading and the frost melting and the sun trying to break through gray clouds. My son had chosen, Amy had chosen, Charlotte had lost more than a marriage. She'd lost them both. I got back in my truck, started the engine, the radio came on, farm report, corn futures up, spring planting starting in the southern counties. On the passenger seat, a folder from Margaret. USDA spring planting subsidy application stamped across the top in red. Required proof of sole ownership. Required public hearing if contested. Margaret's note clipped to the front. File this, force her hand, use it. I filed it that afternoon. Sunday service at First Lutheran. Same pew I'd sat in for 43 years. Third row, right side, near the window where morning light came through the stained glass and made colored patterns on the floor. Charlotte wasn't there. Hadn't been for 3 weeks. Not since Easter. Not since the kids found out. I sat alone. Hymnals stacked in the rack. Smell of old wood and lemon polish and the lilies someone had put on the altar. Organ playing softly. Mrs. Patterson at the keys like always. Fingers moving over the stops. People looked. Tried not to. Looked anyway. Small town. Everyone knew. Margaret had filed the subsidy application 2 days ago. Public notice posted at the courthouse, at the post office, at the feed store. Walter Brennan applying for USDA spring planting subsidy, sole ownership claim, hearing scheduled May 15th. Charlotte had until Friday to contest. Everyone waited to see if she would. Pastor Vic preached about forgiveness. Maybe coincidence. Maybe not. I stopped listening halfway through. Watched that colored light move across the floor as the sun climbed. After the service, they came. The women, Mrs. Patterson first, then Judy Holbrook, Sarah Chin, Linda Erickson. They formed a line like they'd planned it. Mrs. Patterson carried a casserole dish wrapped in foil. "Tuna noodle," she said. "I know you probably aren't cooking much." "Thank you." Judy had a pie. Apple. Still warm. "From yesterday's baking. Thought you could use it." They kept coming. Casseroles and pies and a pot of soup and banana bread wrapped in plastic. I stood there in the fellowship hall, with the coffee urn burbling and the folding chairs scraping and my arms full of food I hadn't asked for. Linda Erickson touched my arm, lowered her voice. "We heard. About Charlotte. About what she did." "I'm sure you did. We want you to know." She glanced at the other women. They nodded. "We voted. Charlotte won't be leading Bible study anymore." I set down the casseroles on a nearby table. "You didn't have to do that." "Yes, we did." Mrs. Patterson's voice was firm. 79 years old, played organ at my wedding. "What she did to you, to your father's land, that's not Christian behavior. That's theft." "She's still welcome at church," Pastor Vic said from behind me. He'd appeared with his coffee, his collar bright white against his black shirt. "We don't turn people away." "Of course not," Judy said. "But we don't have to give her leadership positions either." They drifted away after that, back to their families, their intact marriages, their lives that hadn't fractured down the middle like a cracked plate. I loaded the food into my truck, 9 dishes, enough to feed me for 2 weeks, drove home past empty fields waiting for seed, past the Vasquez place, house dark, no cars in the drive, for sale signs stabbed into the front lawn. Rick really had run. Maria really had left. Their kids, 2 of them, teenage boys I'd seen at the hardware store, gone too. My phone buzzed at a stoplight. Text from Amy, attachment, photo, hotel receipt. Found in Mom's car, March 15th, Super 8, Highway 63, room 24, 2 nights, 187-43. Another photo, same receipt flipped over, handwriting on the back, Charlotte's loops and swirls. R, love you. Can't wait for our future. Below that, Amy's message. Margaret needs this for the hearing. I made copies. The light turned green. Behind me, someone honked. I drove. At home, the house was empty. Charlotte had moved to a motel the week before, the Jasper Inn off Route 1. Margaret's temporary occupancy motion had been extended. Judge's order, Charlotte could access the house for belongings, supervised only, otherwise stay away. The guest room where she'd slept still smelled like her perfume. Floral. Foreign. I'd started keeping the door closed. My phone rang. Not a number I recognized. I almost didn't answer. "Mr. Brennan?" Woman's voice, shaky. "This is Maria Vasquez." I sat down at the kitchen table. "Yes." "I'm sorry to bother you. Your son gave me your number. Said you might understand." "Understand what?" "Rick left 3 days ago. Took his clothes and his truck and just left. He won't answer calls. Won't tell me where he went." Her voice broke. He cleaned out our savings, $23,000, everything we had. Outside the window, crows called from the fence line. Dark shapes against gray sky, rain coming. You could smell it in the air. I'm sorry, I said. That boat he bought? The receipt your daughter found? He told me he was buying equipment for work. I believed him. She laughed, bitter, wrong-sounding. $18,000, your wife's money, and now he's gone, and I can't. Mrs. Vasquez. He left me with nothing. With 2 boys and a mortgage and nothing. I closed my eyes. I know someone, a lawyer, she's helped me. Maybe she can help you too. I can't afford a lawyer. She'll work with you. Tell her I sent you. Silence. Then, thank you. She hung up. I sat at that table in the kitchen where I'd eaten 40 years of meals, where Charlotte had scrambled eggs and hummed and lied to my face every single morning. Rick had run, used her money and ran, left her holding the bag while he vanished to wherever men like him vanish when their lies catch up. Charlotte was alone now, really alone. Kids gone, lover gone, church gone, money gone. Almost sad, Tom had said. Almost. My phone buzzed again. Amy. Mom tried calling. 14 times today. Didn't answer. Neither did Tom. I typed back, good. The barn smelled like oil and dust and 40 years of machinery stored through winters. I went out there at dawn, same as I did every April. Annual ritual. Calibrate the grain scale before planting season. The scale sat on the workbench, where it always had. Brass weights in a wooden box. Balance beam that needed leveling. My father had taught me this when I was 12. A farmer who can't measure true can't farm true, he'd said. Everything starts with honest weight. I cleaned the platform with a rag, checked the fulcrum, set the smallest weight, 1 ounce, and watched the beam settle. Level. True. The door creaked. I didn't turn. Thought I'd find you here. Earl's voice. Boots on concrete. He stood next to me, hands in his jacket pockets. Margaret called. Said the hearing's in 8 days. I know. Charlotte's contesting. Filed yesterday, claims joint ownership, says you coerced her into signing documents she didn't understand. I added another weight. 2 ounces. The beam stayed level. She forged my signature, I said. Margaret knows. She's got the evidence. Darlene's testimony. The handwriting analysis. Earl paused. You'll win, Walt. Then why are you here? He picked up one of the brass weights, turned it over in his palm. Because winning doesn't always feel like winning. Wanted to make sure you knew that. I set down the rag, looked at him. You think I'm wrong, filing for the subsidy, forcing a public hearing. I didn't say that. You're thinking it. Earl set the weight back in the box. Careful, precise. I'm thinking you've been married 40 years. I'm thinking that has to count for something, even now. She stole from me. I know. Tried to take my father's land. I know that too. He leaned against the workbench. I'm just saying, there's winning in court, and then there's the rest of your life. You'll have the farm, the money, the kids on your side. But you'll be alone, Walt. 70 years old next year. Alone. The barn was quiet, except for the wind outside. Metal roof creaking, pigeons cooing in the rafters. Through the open door, gray morning light spread across the fields, still too wet to plant. Mud season. Everything waiting. Was I cold? I asked. Didn't mean to say it out loud. What? Charlotte said I was cold, that I pushed her away, loved my machines more than her. I picked up my wedding ring from where I'd set it on the bench. Gold band, worn thin after 40 years. Was she right? Earl was quiet for a long moment. You work hard, always have. Your father was the same way. Land doesn't farm itself. That's not an answer. No, he said. It's not. He looked at me. You want the truth? Yeah, Walt. Sometimes you were cold. Sometimes you were so focused on the work you forgot there was a person in the house waiting for you. But that doesn't excuse what she did. Not even close. I set the ring on the scale, watched the beam tip, 1/4 ounce of gold carrying 40 years of promises. I keep thinking about the diary, I said. All those entries, all those times she was writing about being lonely, about feeling invisible. I was right there, in the same house, and I never saw it. Maybe she didn't want you to see it. Or maybe I didn't want to look. Earl didn't argue. The wind picked up outside, rain starting, light at first, pattering on the roof like fingers drumming. My father almost lost this place, what I said. 1984, grain prices crashed, banks foreclosing on every farm in the county. He worked himself sick keeping it, literally sick. Heart attack at 59 from the stress. I remember. He made me promise. The day before he died, made me swear I'd never let it go, never sell, never lose it. I picked up the ring, felt the weight of it. So what do I do, Earl? Honor my father's promise or honor my wife's pain, because I can't do both? She made her choice when she forged that deed. Did she? Or did I make it for her years ago when I stopped paying attention? The rain got harder, drumming now. Earl zipped up his jacket. You're looking for permission to forgive her? No. Then what? I don't know. I put the ring back in my pocket. I just know that in 8 days, I'm going to stand in front of the whole town and destroy what's left of my marriage. Publicly, permanently. And I need to know I'm doing it for the right reasons. You're doing it to keep your land. That's one reason. What's the other? I looked at the scale. At the brass weights my father had used, at the barn my grandfather had built, at 40 acres of Iowa dirt that had fed 3 generations and would feed none after me because my only son was a veterinarian and my daughter was a teacher and neither of them wanted to farm. Pride, I said. I'm doing it because she made a fool of me, and I can't let that stand. Earl nodded slowly. At least you're honest. Doesn't make it right. No, but it makes it human. He headed for the door, stopped. For what it's worth. Your father would understand, maybe not approve, but understand. He left. I stayed in the barn, rain falling harder now. The scale sat on the bench, balanced and true. Honest weight. Everything starting with honest weight. I thought about Charlotte, about 14 months of lies, about $18,000 in forged signatures in hotel rooms on Highway 63. I thought about 40 years of shared meals and shared silence and all the ways 2 people can live together and still be alone. Then I thought about my father's land, about his promise, about the weight of it. The beam stayed level, the rain kept falling, some weights you can't put down, even when you want to. At the kitchen table that night, Margaret's folder spread in front of me. USDA subsidy application, proof of ownership documents, hearing agenda, witness list. Amy was coming, Tom was coming, Darlene, Earl. Margaret had even gotten Maria Vasquez to write a statement about Rick's disappearance, about the boat purchase, about the stolen savings that matched Charlotte's withdrawal. Everything lined up, every piece of evidence, every witness ready to testify that Charlotte Brennan had committed fraud and theft and betrayal. My phone sat next to the folder, dark, silent. Charlotte hadn't called in 3 days. Maybe she'd finally given up. Maybe she was sitting in that motel room realizing she'd lost everything. Husband, kids, lover, money, respect. Almost sad, Tom had said. I picked up a pen. Margaret wanted me to prepare a statement. What I'd say at the hearing, how I'd present the evidence. She wanted it cold, clinical, effective. On January 6th, I discovered my wife's affair. I wrote 3 sentences, crossed them out, tried again. For 14 months, Charlotte Brennan conducted an extramarital relationship. Crossed that out too. The truth was simpler. The truth was, I trusted her and she took everything, but you couldn't say that at a hearing, couldn't let the emotion show. Margaret had been clear. Facts win cases, feelings lose them. I set down the pen, stared at the blank statement. Outside, rain still fell. The fields were mud, too wet to plant. Everything waiting for the ground to dry, for spring to really arrive, for something to grow again. The hearing was in 7 days. The Grange Hall hadn't changed since my father's time. Wood floors that creaked, metal folding chairs in rows, stage at the front with a podium and an American flag, smell of old coffee and floor wax and the musty scent of a building that only got used for votes and funerals in moments like this, May 15th. 53 people in those chairs. I'd counted them while we waited. Farmers I'd known for decades, church ladies who'd brought casseroles. Earl in the 3rd row, Darlene near the front, Tom and Amy together on the left side, faces set hard. Charlotte sat alone in the back. She'd lost weight. Hair different, something broken in the way she held herself. I looked away. The hearing officer sat behind a folding table on the stage. James Morton, County Agricultural Extension, 60 years old, bald, reading glasses. He'd processed 1,000 subsidy applications. This was the first one he'd ever had to hold a public hearing for. We'll begin, he said. Microphone feedback squealed. Someone in back coughed. This is a USDA spring planting subsidy hearing regarding application number 2025-1947, filed by Walter Brennan for property described as the northeast quarter of Section 12. Township 84 North, Range 9 West. Applicant claims sole ownership. Claim has been contested by Charlotte Brennan. We'll hear evidence from both parties. Margaret stood, navy suit, briefcase. She looked like she could tear through steel. Officer Morton, I'll be brief. The evidence is clear. She pulled out the first document. Property deed, 1967, original purchase by Howard Brennan, Walter's father. Transferred to Walter upon Howard's death in 2003. No other names on the title. She held it up. People leaned forward to see. Refinance documents 2019, another document. Signed by Walter Brennan, however, she pulled out Darlene's analysis. The signature is dated February 14, 2019. Mr. Brennan was in Omaha that day attending a grain futures conference. He could not have signed these documents. Murmurs, chairs scraping. Charlotte's lawyer, young guy, thin tie, clearly uncomfortable, started to stand, sat back down. Furthermore, Margaret continued, we have evidence of financial fraud. She nodded at Earl. He stood, walked to the front, handed a folder to Officer Morton. Bank statements, highlighted withdrawals, $18,000, smaller amounts before that, dates, times. Mrs. Brennan withdrew substantial sums from joint accounts without Mr. Brennan's knowledge or consent. The largest withdrawal, $18,000 on March 12th, was used to purchase a recreational boat registered to Rick Vasquez, Mrs. Brennan's paramour. The word paramour hung in the air, old-fashioned, damning. Charlotte's lawyer stood. Objection. This is a subsidy hearing, not a divorce proceeding. Marital issues are irrelevant. They're relevant, Morton said, when they speak to fraudulent claims of joint ownership. Continue, Ms. Hale. Margaret smiled, not warm. We also have this. She held up the diary, leather cover, swollen pages. Mrs. Brennan's personal journal documenting the affair in detail. More importantly, documenting her intent to fraudulently transfer property ownership. I quote, Rick says Walt will sign anything. He trusts me with his papers. She let that sit. The hall was dead quiet. Even the pigeons in the rafters had stopped cooing. Finally, we have testimony. Margaret gestured to Darlene. The county clerk will testify that a quitclaim deed was drafted, not filed, but drafted, attempting to transfer sole ownership to Mrs. Brennan. The signature on that document does not match Mr. Brennan's verified signature. It's a forgery. Darlene stood, walked to the front, sworn in, testified for 10 minutes, showed the signature comparison, the dates, the digital records. Her voice was steady, professional. She didn't look at Charlotte once. When she finished, Morton made notes. Mrs. Brennan, you have the right to present evidence or testimony. Charlotte's lawyer whispered to her. She shook her head, stood on her own, walked to the front without notes, without documents, without anything but her own voice. I made mistakes, she said. Microphone feedback. She stepped back, tried again. I made terrible mistakes. But that farm, my husband and I built a life there. 40 years, I cooked in that kitchen, raised my children in that house. I have a right. What right? Amy's voice, loud, clear. She stood. What right do you have to something you tried to steal? Morton raised his hand. Ma'am, please. No. Amy was crying now, angry tears. She forged his signature. She took money. She tried to take Grandpa's land he almost died for, and sell it so she could run off with some guy who bought a boat with her stolen money and then left her anyway. Tom stood next to his sister, put his hand on her shoulder, looked at Charlotte. We have a right to speak. We're witnesses. Morton looked at Margaret. She nodded. They're on the witness list. Fine. Proceed. Tom didn't move from his seat, just spoke, loud enough for everyone to hear. My grandfather worked that land for 40 years. My father's worked it for 43. It's been in our family since 1907. My mother... His voice cracked. He steadied it. My mother tried to steal it. Not claim it, steal it. Using forged documents. That's not a marital dispute. That's theft. Amy pulled out her phone. I have evidence, too. Hotel receipts I found in her car, texts I recovered from her iPad before she wiped it. Dates, times, places. She looked at Charlotte, finally looked at her. You wrote love you on the back of a receipt, to him, while Dad was home thinking everything was fine. She handed the phone to Morton. He looked at the photos, set the phone down carefully. Mrs. Brennan, he said, do you have any evidence to counter these claims? Charlotte stood there, silent, broken. Then she spoke, So quiet the microphone barely caught it. I was lonely. 3 words. That's all she had. I was lonely, and he didn't see me, and I made a mistake, and I... She stopped, looked at the faces staring at her. 53 people. Her neighbors, her church, her children. I'm sorry. Morton cleared his throat. This hearing requires an advisory vote from the community members present. Those in favor of granting Walter Brennan sole ownership status for subsidy purposes, please raise your hand. Hands went up, one after another. Earl, Darlene, the church ladies, farmers who'd known my father, farmers who'd known me, Mrs. Patterson, Judy Holbrook, Tom, Amy, shaking, crying, but her hand up. Morton counted. 47. Those opposed? 3 hands, people I didn't know well, folks from the edge of the county. Maybe they believed in second chances, maybe they just didn't like public shamings. 3. Morton made a note. Abstentions? 3 more stayed seated, arms crossed, not willing to condemn, not willing to condone. The advisory vote is 47-3 in favor of the applicant. Morton stamped the form. The sound echoed. Final. Done. Mr. Brennan, your subsidy application is approved. You may begin planting operations as sole owner. He gathered his papers. This hearing is concluded. People stood, chairs scraping, low conversations. Tom and Amy came to me, hugged me. Amy was still crying. Tom's jaw was set so tight I thought he'd crack a tooth. Charlotte walked out alone. Nobody stopped her. Nobody followed. The door closed behind her with a soft click. Margaret packed her briefcase. That's it. It's over. But it wasn't. Not really. In the parking lot afterward, Amy handed me one more document. Printed email, timestamp from that morning, subject line, bank account activity alert. Rick Vasquez had attempted to access Charlotte's separate checking account, the one in her name only, attempted from somewhere in Florida. Transaction denied, insufficient funds. He'd taken her money, left her, and now he was trying to take what little she had left. Amy's note at the bottom. Margaret says this is evidence for the divorce trial. Rick's lawyer already dropped him. Maria's lawyer's filing fraud charges. I folded the paper, put it in my pocket, looked at the Grange Hall, at the parking lot emptying out, at Charlotte's car, still there, engine running, her silhouette behind the wheel. She sat there for 5 minutes, then drove away. The farm was mine, legally, publicly, permanently. I'd won. Didn't feel like it. Charlotte moved out 2 days after the hearing. Thursday morning, I wasn't there, didn't want to be. Margaret had arranged it through the lawyers, supervised visit, take only personal belongings, no access to financial documents or property deeds. Amy texted me photos afterward. Empty closet, bare dresser, the guest room stripped down to the mattress. Charlotte had taken her clothes, her jewelry, the photo albums from when the kids were small, left everything else. The kitchen still had her coffee mugs. The living room still had the quilt her grandmother made. The bathroom still smelled like her soap. That floral scent I'd stopped noticing years ago, until I noticed it was gone. The divorce was finalized 3 weeks later, quick, clean. Margaret had built a case so airtight Charlotte's lawyer advised her not to contest. No alimony. The fraud negated any claim. Assets split heavily in my favor. The farm stayed mine. The house stayed mine. She got her car, her personal accounts, and nothing else. Judge signed the papers on June 2nd. 40 years ended with a signature and a stamp. I drove home from the courthouse alone. Past the fields now green with soybeans. Past the Vasquez place, sold finally, new family moving in, a swing set going up in the yard. Past the diner, where Earl still sat in his booth, though now he waved when I drove by, instead of waiting for me to stop. I didn't stop much anymore. The house was quiet when I got home. That wasn't new. It had been quiet since January. But this was different. This was permanent quiet. The kind that doesn't break for dinner conversation or radio playing, or someone humming while they cook. I made coffee. Sat at the kitchen table. The divorce decree sat in front of me. Legal language. Dissolution of marriage. Irreconcilable differences. I read it twice. Couldn't quite believe it was real. My phone rang. Amy. Hey, Dad. Hey, sweetheart. Tom and I were thinking, maybe we could come out this weekend. Help you with some things around the house. Whatever you need. I'm fine. Dad. I mean it. I'm fine. She was quiet for a moment. Have you talked to her? No. She's staying at that motel still, the Jasper Inn. I drove by yesterday. Her car was there. Amy, I'm not saying you should call her. I'm just saying she's still here, in town, and she's alone. I looked out the window. The fields stretched to the horizon, green rows, straight lines. Everything ordered, everything in its place. She made her choice, I said. I know. Amy's voice was soft. I don't want you to wake up one day and regret this. Either way, whatever you decide. There's nothing to decide? It's done. Okay. She didn't sound convinced. We'll come by Sunday anyway. I'll make dinner. You don't have to. I want to. She hung up, and I sat there with my cold coffee and my divorce papers in the silence that filled every corner of the house. Saturday, I cleaned out the basement. The cedar chest sat in the same corner where I'd found it 5 months ago. I opened it. The Christmas lights were still there, tangled and dusty. Under them, the quilts Charlotte's grandmother had made. And under those, the diary. I picked it up, leather worn smooth, pages swollen. I hadn't looked at it since that first morning. Hadn't needed to. Margaret had used it as evidence, but I'd never read past those first terrible pages. I opened it now, flipped through slowly. The early entries were what I expected. Rick this, Rick that, how he made her feel, how I didn't. But there were other entries too, ones I'd missed. September 3rd, watched Walt fix the combine today. He gets this look when he's working. Focused, like nothing else exists. Used to love that look, used to feel like I was part of what he was focused on. Don't feel that way anymore. October 12th, 40 years tomorrow. Walt didn't mention it. Maybe he forgot. Maybe he remembers and doesn't care. Don't know which is worse. November 8th, made his favorite dinner, pot roast. He ate 3 helpings, didn't say a word, just ate and went back to the barn. Sometimes I think I could disappear, and he'd only notice when dinner wasn't on the table. I closed the diary, set it back in the chest, underneath the quilts, underneath the Christmas lights, closed the lid, some things you can't unknow, some truths sit in your chest like stones. She'd been lonely, really lonely, and I'd been there the whole time, close enough to touch, and I'd never seen it. That didn't excuse what she did, the affair, the theft, the forgery, but it explained it, made it make sense in a way that hurt worse than the betrayal itself. I locked the chest, took the key, went outside. The garden was overgrown. Charlotte had always kept it. Tomatoes and peppers and green beans in neat rows. Now it was weeds and volunteer corn, and nothing worth saving. I dug a small hole near the fence post, dropped the key in, covered it with dirt, patted it smooth. Some chapters you close, some you bury. Sunday, Amy and Tom came. Amy brought lasagna and garlic bread. Tom brought beer and his wife Sarah, who'd stayed away during the worst of it, but was ready to come back now. We ate at the kitchen table. Same chairs, different people sitting in them. The fields look good, Tom said. Soybeans came up nice. Yeah. You doing all the work yourself? Hired the Jensen kid part-time. He's learning. Amy cut another piece of lasagna. Dad, we've been talking, Tom and me, about the farm. What about it? After you, she stopped. I mean, eventually. What happens to it? You two get it. Split it however you want. We don't want to farm it, Tom said. You know that. Then sell it, lease it. I don't care. You say that. Amy's voice was gentle. But Grandpa cared. You care. This land, it means something. I set down my fork. It's 40 acres of dirt. It means what you make it mean. That's not true, and you know it. Tom leaned forward. Grandpa almost died keeping this place. You just fought like hell to keep it. Don't tell me it's just dirt. Then what is it? Neither of them answered right away. Sarah got up, started clearing plates. Amy fidgeted with her napkin. Tom stared at his beer. Finally, Amy said, It's home. Even if we don't live here, even if we never farm it, it's still home. I looked at them, my kids, 41 and 38, grown, gone, building their own lives in their own ways, but they were here, at this table, in this house, on this land. Then that's what it is, I said. Home, for as long as you want it. They left at sunset. I stood on the porch and watched their taillights disappear down the gravel road. The fields stretched out in the fading light, green rows, straight lines. First planting I'd done alone in 43 years. The soybeans had come up 2 weeks ago, small shoots pushing through the soil. I'd walked the rows that first morning, checking for gaps, looking for problems, found none. Just row after row of new growth. I hadn't called anyone, hadn't celebrated, just stood there in the field watching things grow. Now, in the evening quiet, I could hear them, the soybeans rustling in the breeze, the meadowlarks calling from fence posts, the screen door creaking on its hinges behind me. Spring had come, the way it always did, the way it always would. My phone buzzed. Text from Earl. Poker tomorrow night. You in? I typed back, yeah. Another buzz. Darlene. Sunday dinner next week. Bring nothing. Just come. Okay. Life moving forward the way it does. Whether you're ready or not. I went inside. Made coffee. Sat at the table with the divorce papers I still hadn't filed away. Next to them, the subsidy approval. The permit that had started everything. The document that proved I owned this land. Solely, legally, completely, 40 acres, one house, no wife, 2 kids who visited, a sister who cooked, a friend who played cards. Not the life I'd planned, not the one I'd built over 40 years. But it was mine. Honestly mine. No lies underneath, no betrayals hiding in cedar chests. I picked up the divorce decree, filed it in the cabinet with the other important papers. Deeds, titles, permits, documents that proved what was real and what was mine. Then I poured my coffee and walked out to the porch. The sun was setting, orange and pink spreading across the horizon, the fields going dark, crows settling in the trees, that smell in the air, warm soil and coming rain and something green growing. 43 years I'd farmed this land. Might have 43 more, might have 5. Didn't know, couldn't know. But tonight, standing on this porch with coffee going cold in my hand, watching the sun sink behind the barn my grandfather built, I was alone. And for the first time since January, that felt okay. Not good, not happy, just okay. Enough to keep going, enough to plant again next spring, enough to watch things grow and know I'd grown them honest. The screen door creaked. I let it. Some sounds you don't fix. Some sounds remind you you're home. 2 weeks later, the first shoots came up, tiny green points breaking through soil, soybeans reaching for light. I walked the field, at dawn, coffee in hand, checking the rows, even emerged. Good spacing, the crop looked strong, I didn't call anyone, didn't share the news, just watched those shoots grow while the sun climbed and the meadowlarks called from the fence posts and the morning warmed into something that felt almost like the start of something new. The farm was mined, the land was mined, the work was mined, and I was alone. But alone wasn't the same as empty, not quite, not yet. The soybeans kept growing, I kept working. The season moved forward because seasons always do, whether you're ready or not. Spring became summer, the fields turned deep green, life went on, it had to. 3 months after the soybeans came up, I sat on the porch at dusk with coffee going cold in my hand. August evening, warm but not hot, the kind of night where the air settles soft and the world goes quiet except for the insects and the birds heading home. The fields stretched out green and healthy. Good crop, better than I'd expected. The work had been something to hold on to when everything else fell away. Tom had started coming around again, not often. Once every couple weeks, we'd walk the fence line together, not saying much, just checking posts and talking about his practice and the weather. Amy called on Sundays, short conversations, safe topics. The kids were healing in their own time, their own ways. Charlotte, I'd heard, moved to her sister's place in Nebraska. The real sister, not the imaginary one she'd used as an alibi. Working part-time at a grocery store, living in a basement apartment. The county gossip moved on eventually, but the memory stayed. I thought about trust sometimes, how I'd given it completely and how that had been my mistake. Not the trusting itself, but the completeness of it. The assumption that 40 years meant forever. 40 years, I'd learned, just meant 40 years. Nothing more guaranteed than that. But sitting there with my coffee and my crop and my quiet, I understood something else too. I didn't win because I was right. I won because I kept the receipts, because I everything documented, because I'd learned that love without verification is just faith, and faith without evidence is just hope, and hope doesn't hold up in court. Charlotte had wanted spring to change everything. She was right, just not the way she'd planned. The screen door creaked behind me, just wind, no one there. Meadowlarks called from the fence posts. The tractor sat in the barn ready for tomorrow. Crocuses had bloomed by the mailbox back in April. First flowers, then long winter. They'd died back now, but they'd come again next spring. They always did. I still had that diary, locked in the chest where I'd found it. Hadn't opened it since May. Maybe I never would again. Some winters you survive by reminding. Some springs you survive by forgetting. The coffee was cold. I drank it anyway. The sun dropped below the horizon. The fields went dark. I went inside. Alone, but not lonely. Not anymore. Just a man with land to farm and work to do and seasons that kept turning whether he was ready or not. And I was ready. Finally,